Canada is one of the most multicultural countries on planet Earth. In fact, where I live in Toronto, you can choose from almost any religion you like. You can choose from Islamism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, Judaism, atheism, secularism. You can even be a Maple Leafs fan. We call that masochism. Now, the problem is when many people see that fact of plurality, the fact that we live in a very pluralistic country, it's very easy to slide from the fact of plurality into the philosophy of pluralism. You see, it's one thing to say there are lots of different religions. It's another thing entirely to look at all those religions and say, well, they're all essentially the same. And those two claims are not the same. You see, I think the mistake that we've sometimes made is that Canada and our multicultural countries and societies in the West were founded on the idea that all people are equal. But just because all people are equal does not mean all ideas are the same. And that goes for religion and belief systems more than anything. The interesting thing I find is that when I hear people say to me, all religions are the same, I often ask them this question. I often say, that's very interesting. Tell me, which of the major world religions have you studied? Often, there is then an embarrassed silence. Because it's one thing to say, all religions are the same, it's another thing to actually go out and do the work and investigate them. Now, in my case, I've studied two religions. I'm a Christian, so I've spent most of my adult life thinking through and reflecting on my Christian faith. I also have a PhD in Islamic studies, because I've spent the last 20 years or so dialoguing with Muslims in various contexts, and I wanted to go deeply into what they believed, so I made sure I understood what it was that my Muslim friends held dear. And what was interesting, the more I studied Islam, for my doctoral work and beyond, the more I discovered something that really surprised me. On almost every major point of Christian doctrine, Islam teaches something utterly the opposite. To give you just one example, at the heart of the Christian faith is the claim that Jesus of Nazareth died on a cross sometime around about AD 30 and then rose from the dead 3 days later. Well, not merely does the Quran reject the idea of Christ's resurrection, the Quran actually flatly denies that Jesus was ever crucified in the first place. So you have a problem. Either he was crucified or he wasn't crucified. You can't really harmonize those claims. They utterly contradict one another. They are two different systems of thought entirely. But there's something else I found interesting as I've studied some of the world's major religions, and it's this. Every religion in the world, with one exception, and we'll come to that in a moment. Every religion in the world is based on one of three things. It's either based on knowledge, or it's based on experience, or it's based on action. In other words, all the religions of the world, from Islam to Buddhism to Hinduism to Sikhism and beyond, tell you that you are saved, that you achieve wisdom, enlightenment, nirvana, or a higher state of existence, whatever it is you're looking for, either through knowing the right thing, it's information that saves you, or through having the right mystical experience. It's experience that saves you, or through doing the right thing. It's through keeping the right commandments that you are saved. That's largely the way that Islam works. Knowledge, experience, or action. There is one exception to that framework, and that exception is Christianity. You see, Christianity does talk about knowledge, and it does talk about experience, and it does talk about action, but those are not what define Christianity. At the heart of Christianity lies a person, Jesus Christ, whose claims are either true or false. And primarily the claim of Jesus was this. Jesus said the problem with us as human beings, the problem at the heart of the human condition is not a lack of knowledge, not a lack of experience, not a lack of ability to do the right things, but something fundamentally broken in our very being. And what we need as human beings is not information, experience, or action. What we need is a change in our very hearts. And that's the promise of the gospel at the heart of the Christian faith. If you put your faith in Christ, if you invite him to come in and deal with what the Bible calls sin, you can become a new creation. Your very being can be changed. You see, Christianity is not about a state of mind, it's about a state of being. It's about becoming a new creation. One final thought. I'm often asked, do all religions lead to God? It's interesting, only one religion promises to lead us to God. You will not find God waiting for you in heaven in Islam. You'll not find God waiting you at the end of enlightenment in Buddhism. Only one religion claims that in heaven, God will be there with you if you put your faith in Christ, and that's Christianity. Only one religion leads you to God. That's Christianity.